I've always been committed to success. You trade problems for other problems.
It can be a roller coaster when it comes to cash flow.
Everybody's got a plan to get punched in the face.
I struggle with now. It's like, well, I can go golfing now whenever I want.
I've got kind of shiny ball syndrome.
First year was very scary for me.
You know, I don't have kids, none that I know about.
There's always that risk, right?
You were supposed to call me G Money. If I'm not going to go chase my dream now, I'll probably never end up doing it. That's me in a nutshell. Maybe we do that after. I don't think we're that close.
All right, today is an exciting episode, one we've been talking about doing for a long time. And this episode is going to be about Geoff Stewart is now officially a full-time entrepreneur / real estate investor.
You were supposed to call me G Money.
G Money.
Just kidding.
Okay, all right.
That's my new nickname.
Self nickname. Okay, so So yeah, we want to go through and learn. So a lot of listeners might not even have known, like throughout this podcast, we've been doing this for over a year now, that you were also working a full-time job while running our business at Smart Asset Capital. In this episode, we want to go through kind of that transition of you building a successful career in corporate America and deciding to leave all that behind to go pursue your entrepreneurship journey. And also kind of the stuff along the way and what you were doing along the way. So to start, I think it might be good to just describe a little bit like what you did in corporate America, right? So maybe we start with out of college, right? Because you were in somewhat the same industry the whole time. So let's start there and kind of walk through your progression through there.
Yeah. So and it honestly does. It's a good because I met Adam, our other partner, at my first sales job. We were both in corporate America selling payroll services right out of college. So that's actually there's a good little integration there. But so I going back to being in college, I was playing football. I had a season-ending injury at the last season of the year, like second game of the year. So I kind of had, and I didn't have like really almost any classes. I was just playing football that last semester, and I thought, well, shit, I've got to really figure out what I want to do. And I've always been really social, really competitive, good at talking with people. I always liked to get up and speak in front of people. I like the podcast a lot. If you can't tell, some people might say that I like hearing myself talk, but that's not true because I don't. Okay, maybe I do, but I don't love listening to the podcast. Sometimes I cringe at myself. So disclaimer there. But so sales. I also had a football coach that I respect a ton. Still good friends with to this day. He was in med device sales, and he had a nice house and a big ass boat. And I was like, okay, well, he explained to me that in sales you can make a lot of money. You've got some level of independence and freedom, and and those were two things that and if you're competitive and hungry, it can work out really well for you, right? And he knew me since I was like, I don't know, 12. So he thought it would be great for me to look into sales roles. So after my football career was ending, and I didn't have a lot of classes that I cared about very much at all. One was Environmental Science 105, and let me tell you, it didn't go very well. But I started reading and studying sales books. And I tried to approach it like, rather than studying film or studying the playbook with football, I wanted to approach it like I'm going to read everything I can about sales, because it's one thing to be, and that's why we should do another episode on this, and we will eventually one day, about just overall sales skills, sales tactics. It's super important for anyone to learn. And so I knew that I had some raw abilities when it comes to sales, and some talent that could be potentially there, but I wanted to learn different frameworks. I wanted to learn everything I could about sales, and so I ended up getting a sales job, B2B sales job, at selling payroll services. Met some great leaders there, and it was really kind of detailed sales training. Which I wanted as well, and we were selling to small businesses. And I met Adam McCarthy there. He was my first mentor at Paychex, and I'll never forget. He was either negotiating his first or his second duplex. I think he was already living in a duplex, and then he was buying another one. And I'm sitting in the car. I'm like, oh shit, this is cool, right? But at the time, I still wasn't even really thinking about real estate. And then two things sort of occurred, right? I was studying sales and salespeople, and Grant Cardone popped up. And everybody loves Grant Cardone, but this is Grant Cardone before the 10X movement. This is before that book, before his real estate. So as I was studying Grant Cardone, and I met Adam, and then over the next couple of years, I was progressing in my sales career. I went from the B2B sales, selling payroll services, to selling capital equipment in the medical device industry, and then some software within the medical world, and at Stryker, and then I was at GE, both great companies as well. And I was studying them, and I was starting to make commissions, and I was like, okay, I saw what Adam was doing within real estate. Grant Cardone had started talking about real estate, and I'm like, I also realized too, I was, 22, 23, 24, making, living a weird lifestyle where you get a big commission check, but you might not make a lot of money at all for the next couple months, right? And I realized if I didn't figure out a strategy of where I'm going to invest, I'm just going to blow this money, right? And I'm working my ass off. I mean, when I moved for that second role of mine, I moved to Fargo, North Dakota. I've always been committed to success, and basically saying I'll do whatever it takes to be able to provide for myself, my future family, and that was what sales represented to me, and a way to make a significant income. But I was in Fargo, North Dakota, didn't know anyone there, not a huge hunter. I love the people in Fargo, but I mean, I was grinding. I was getting up at 5 a.m., driving to Grand Forks and Minot and Bismarck, and I'm driving this Jetta through just treacherous weather, trying to get to these meetings and sell these customers on potentially what you're doing in sales is you're trying to help them with outcomes, right? And at the time I was selling these beds and stretchers that could help reduce patients from falling. Like if you're in the hospital and you fall, you might break a hip or something. That's a huge adverse event for a hospital, and they're paying a lot of money then. Or bed sores like pressure ulcers and stuff like that. So you're trying to help them improve their outcomes. And that's one thing that I've taken away from sales. No matter what, you're not selling the hammer or the nail, you're selling the picture on the wall and how beautiful it looks, right? You're selling the outcome. But at the time, right, I started making more commissions, and I realized, okay, it's easy to blow money when you're 23 years old, 24 years old, and you want to go travel, do whatever, right? So I would have a commission check, and I wanted to go park that somewhere, and I knew the guy to call. Adam McCarthy helped me buy my first duplex, and then I started buying some more with him, over time, I'd read about 50 sales books, and then I started sprinkling in real estate books and more real estate books and podcasts and learning real estate. And so it's been this natural progression. And then, I was at GE. I was living in Chicago after I moved from Fargo, and the bulk of my career in corporate America has been at SAP. And SAP is the biggest software company in Europe, one of the biggest software companies in the world. I'd met somebody else that I built a relationship with over time, and he helped get me into SAP. And what technology sales represented to me was, even I thought, even higher income potential, right? And I thought, okay, the more income I make, the more properties I can buy, the more quote unquote passive income, or at least income from real estate. I wasn't really thinking about, I've never really thought about real estate as like passive income. And anyone that, to get truly passive income, you got to be a limited partner of a deal, right? And then you get mailbox money, right? Like every quarter or whatever. But so I just wanted more income aside from my job. And I'll tell you why too. It's as I've been thinking about this episode that we were going to do last night, I thought about it quite a bit. Like there's a number of things in my life that kind of led to where I'm at and where we are. But there was someone very close to me that I saw work for a company for 28 or 29 years and did really well for themselves. But one day, that company made a decision, and they were, essentially not, they were at a, kind of a critical time in their life, not ready to retire. And the rug kind of got pulled out from under him. And so I always wanted to have, real estate started off for me as like, you know what, if I can build an income aside from my corporate earnings, I can have some level of a safety net, right? Like if you can get yourself to be making $5,000 a month, $10,000 a month outside of what you make in your W-2 job, that alleviates some pressures, right? And then I learned more and more about real estate and how you can add value, force appreciation, principal pay down, right? There's a lot of ways to build wealth aside from just the additional income.
So when was on that topic, like so a lot of people do that, right? Not a lot, but a good portion of people, take their income from their W-2 and they'll invest in the stock market or real estate, right? That's a common approach to build a retirement. But at what point throughout this career process did you have the realization like, hey, I want to make this my full-time thing? Like I want to become a full-time entrepreneur, real estate investor, and leave the W-2 world to do that?
Yeah, I mean, so the further I got into it, like I said, so that was the starting point of like I wanted to build a side income. The more I studied real estate, the more I realized that the potential, is essentially limitless, right? And you can, it's about your blood, sweat, and tears, your grind, your work ethic, your creativity, your networking abilities. But I mean, you can build a real estate company that, can be ringing the bell on Wall Street someday. And so my ambition reached a point where it was like, hey, we could build, well, I'll take a step back, right? We met, it was about the same time we were studying syndication. I didn't know what syndication was before 6 years ago, right? I started, again, I'll go back to the books, started reading, studying podcasts, and I thought syndication, here's a way that we could build a real estate company. I don't, because even if I was making, at the time, probably $200,000 a year or so, eventually you run out of money, right? So to be able to build more real estate wealth and have more assets and a bigger portfolio, you usually got to start taking on investor capital. Now, some guys don't do that, and that's totally fine too. But once I realized that we could build a syndication company, a private equity company, then I started to think, this is something that I think I could be really excited about doing for the rest of my life. And I don't ever think I'll retire. Whereas in corporate America, I mean, it's a grind. I mean, this is a grind too. There's no doubt about it. But it's something that you have just more control over, more freedom, comes with more risk, I would say, there's no doubt. But I could also make the case that it's risky just depending on, one income from a W-2 job.
We connected, like you said, it was like 2018, I think. And we both were on a similar page, right? You were a little bit further in your career. I think you had a little bit more in your portfolio. I owned one property. I think you had a few. But we both started talking about this syndication, all right? Yeah. We both were starting to study it, and we both understood, like, hey, this is a way to build something big, right? Yeah. To be able to go out, raise capital. There's no ceiling on how big we can go.
Exactly.
Now it's not, okay, I got $20,000. I can only buy a $100,000 property. It's I can raise $20 million, buy a $100 million property.
Yep.
So that's how we initially got connected, right? And we've talked about this story. We don't need to go through all of that again, but maybe we just go through the timeline of, how from 2018 we met, 2019 we did our first syndication deal, 89 unit apartment building. Talked about it on our podcast. Yeah. And maybe go through the timeline of from 2019 to, we're mid 2024 now, that journey of building this business that led to you leaving that job, right? So during that whole time, you were doing both, right? And I was kind of halfway through that, right? So I left my corporate job a few years ago, and we can talk maybe a little bit the differences there between that decision process. But maybe we go a little bit through that journey, right? Like all the deals we did. At what point how big did we have to make this thing before you felt comfortable leaving? Maybe kind of talk through that timeline a little bit more. Yeah,
I mean, so there's a couple things that go in. Everything is multifaceted in life, right? So there's some personal reasons that I didn't take the leap sooner. One being a relationship that I was in that I was living. I moved out to the West Coast, and I was still trying to figure out how that would work, and that still could have worked, but at the time, And then there was a pandemic in there, right? Nobody knew what that was going to do, right? So while it was always in the back of my mind as something that I was going to do at some point, right? I was trying to figure out the right time to do it. You had went full time first, 3 years ago. I also didn't want. I started making more money. I would say I didn't hate my job, right? I worked with a lot of people that I really respect. There's things that I didn't love about corporate America, the bureaucracy and the minutia and stuff that quite frankly can suck. But no matter what, you trade problems for other problems, right? And there's a lot of great things about it. But the main factors were that I didn't leave sooner. One, I didn't hate what I was doing. I was learning a ton. I was working with great clients and colleagues. Some of the clients that I'd worked with are some of the biggest companies in the world. The training that we would get at SAP on negotiating deals is second to none. And looking back, I mean, maybe we would have been further along had I left sooner. And that's something that I've got to sit and think about. But it's always just trying to make a judgment call. I had started to make more money. More money is good in my mind, right? More short-term money, right? Whereas I think this has the potential to make more money over the long haul in a career. And then just personal reasons where, I wasn't sure exactly where I was going to be living yet. I also didn't want to stress the asset management fees, right? We were paying you out of that as well. And, I didn't want us to, I didn't know if we were quite at a point where it would make sense. Plus, I had a fair amount of freedom in the roles that I was in at SAP where I, wasn't necessarily, I was grinding my ass off for SAP. And traveling a bunch and whatever, but I wasn't going into an office every day, kind of sitting there. And I was able to take real estate calls during the workday and still work on things. And a majority, I would say, I would do towards the end. It really got to be doing, just both of them all the time, right? But and just being really maniacal about your calendar and trying to figure that out. The multitasking is not great, but if I'm on an SAP call, I got to be all in. And I learned a lot by doing that, right? You think about, and I think about everything that I do, and that you should be doing these, in your life is potentially preparing you for something more down the future, right? I learned a lot about having to be present, and it's something that I suck at still. I've got kind of shiny ball syndrome. I've been called a Labrador retriever, right? I get excited about something, and so but because I was doing so much with SAP in a demanding full-time job, and then also working on growing our portfolio, and sometimes you got big deals going on in both of them, right? And you've just got to prioritize, and you got to figure out how to be ultra present with the people that you're talking to at that moment.
I agree. And I think something I would like to go through and maybe highlight as one of the key things of this episode is someone that's listening to this that is currently in a W-2 corporate setting that has a side hustle right now, mm-hmm. right? And it's a common thing trying to figure out at what point do I make the side hustle the main hustle?
Yeah.
Right. I think it's certainly most people that become entrepreneurs start by doing it on the side, right? It's the side business. So I certainly would like to dive a little deeper in that to kind of figure out, provide more rationale behind at what point, leaving that makes sense. And I think for me, I can give insight on, you mentioned a little bit there, but so like you said, we started our business in 2019. I left that, I think it was 2022. So I think I'm about 2.5 years in or so. So, having done it for 2.5 years. So I think at that point we did 6 or 7 deals.
Smaller deals.
Smaller deals. And for me, the rationale was, and one thing to highlight, right, is a big difference is at the peak of when I left, I think I was making $80K a year or something, 80 or 90K a year. And for me, the decision was we had built the portfolio and we made our own kind of internal agreement, like Geoff said, that the cash flow coming in from the portfolio was about equal to what I was making from my W-2. That being said, it's tough to use that metric because especially in real estate and any business in general, right, is it's not a paycheck's a paycheck, right? You make $3,000 every 2 weeks, comes in like clockwork, right? It's not really going to change. It might go up a little bit year by year, but with real estate investing specifically, it can be a really good quarter and then it could be a down quarter, right? So it can be a roller coaster when it comes to cash flow. And that was, talked about this in other episodes. I mean, the first year was very scary for me, and I had a lot of money on a credit card. So that was the rationale I had when I left.
Try to avoid that.
But I think there's always that risk, right? Like, so for you, it was a little bit different, right? I mean, you were making 4 or 5 times as much as I was making in your W-2 role. So, you know, at what point, right? So again, 2022 is kind of when I left. We go on, we do another 6 or so deals over the past 2.5 years to get us to where we are today in mid 2024. Where was that moment where you were like, and I know, you had it in your mind for a while, and it was, the year before or whatever. But at what point were you finally like, fuck it, now's the time to do it. This is going on. I'm done. I'm going full time to this. What was that decision process?
Man, it's kind of a gut feel thing where, I took a step back and like I said, everything's multifaceted. I looked at my life personally. I looked at my expenses. I'm living in a condo that I bought for $180,000 in 2017 or something like that. Relatively low cost of living. It's just me and my dog. And, and I've been able to build enough cash and cash flow from this real estate business that you look at all of them, all those things together, and you think, well, if I'm not going to go chase my dream now, I'll probably never end up doing it, right? And then I don't want to regret it when I'm 80 years old, right? So if I can't, it was, and that's why it just felt right. You know what I mean? Like, up until that point, there was days that I certainly wanted to do it. I'll tell you that, years before. But, and I think everyone goes through that. But, it just really clicked at this moment that, evaluating my financial picture, evaluating where we are in our business, evaluating the real estate market, where we're about to go with a real estate fund that we're working on, and the potential for all that. All those things together basically became, it became a no-brainer in my mind.
So it wasn't necessarily then like, hey, I achieved a certain dollar per month coming in, or like a certain milestone from income on the real estate business. It was more so, hey, I see this tsunami of great opportunity coming in our business that I have to go full time to capitalize on this opportunity.
Exactly. It's different for everyone, right? Some people like your goal or your metric was, hey, if I can be making roughly what I'm making in my job, then I'm going to leave. And I think a lot of people do that, and that's a great way to look at it too. It didn't really work out like that for me. And funny thing is, I posted a video on LinkedIn thanking SAP and my colleagues and clients and partners and everything, and I got 300, 400 likes on there. I got almost, I don't know about 10, but 6, 7, 8, 9 different people reached out to me about wanting to set up calls because they want to do something similar. They're working on real estate. Maybe they bought some properties on the side and they want to figure out how to think about it. So it's different for everyone. I just thought I have to make a decision here because I couldn't go where I'd want to go within real estate if I don't have this time freed up for me, right? And that was the main thing. And I looked at it and I thought, well, it kind of feels like now or never, right? Because what happens too is, for better or for worse, the golden handcuffs. If you're successful in your corporate role, they're very good at, there's upward mobility. You start to make more money. I was pretty good about not letting lifestyle creep get involved. I mean, no, I don't. Well, maybe not. Yeah.
Seen you out on the weekends. I don't know.
Yeah. Good point. So maybe I did, but so there was that. But also, just it was more about, the thing for me was the stocks. That when I saw that and I thought, oh shit, I see. You look at this, kind of internal stock vesting program that happens, and then you think and extrapolate that further. 3 years out, 5 years out, 10 years out, right? And eventually you get to a point and there's deferred tax stock programs that they can start giving you at a certain level. And it's like, at that point, it's like, well, you'd be dumb to leave. But then if that really was your dream, then you're kind of going to miss that window. And especially if, I don't have kids, right? If I had kids, none that I know about, maybe in Mexico somewhere, just kidding. But, I say that, but like, I don't have a family right now. So I'm like, you know what? It just made sense. And I think everybody's got to do a detailed analysis for themselves. They've also got to think about how much do they hate their job? Like Steve Jobs said back in the day, if you wake up every single day and you look yourself in your mirror and you're like, this is not what I want to be doing today, eventually you got to make the decision to figure out what it is that you want to do. And I didn't have that every single day, right? So it wasn't like a burning need to like, I need to get the hell out of here. There was certainly days like that, but there's going to be days, like I said, you trade one set of problems or constituencies for another one, right? Whether you're reporting to a boss or multiple bosses, or you're reporting to investors or clients or partners or whatever, right? Like no matter what, I'm pretty much as busy as I was working at SAP. It's a little bit less multitasking, a little bit less. I can even be more focused and ultra present, which I think is going to yield a lot of benefits. I'm having real estate conversations all day, every day versus having real estate conversations, then having software tech conversations. A lot of those tech conversations were about trying to help businesses solve problems. So I always tried to frame it like, well, I'm learning something. This is how this business that's at a massive scale, multi-billion-dollar sales company had this problem, and this is how we tried to help them solve it. And I think about that when we're with our business and we're making decisions on buying software and implementing different processes and stuff like that. And I have it, and that's more your thing. But I think, as we grow this business, I think, having, over 8 years with SAP is going to help down the road in making some of those decisions, because I'll be able to think back and be like, oh shit, this company was doing that. And that's the main goal, is because I want to be able to build a big business. I want to do something that I think is going to be really significant and that I can be really, really proud of. And it's not that I couldn't have done that in corporate America, but having the freedom and the latitude to build, run our own company. And it's not even something that we got to build from scratch right now, right? It's something that's been 5 years in the making, and not even just 5 years in the making. I've been investing in real estate for 10 years. So
there's a few things there too that I would highlight that you said. So one is there's a lot of philosophies out there on, when to become when to go full time, right? And I think, the first one would be burn the boats early on, right? And right away you burn all the boats and go all in, and that's worked for many people, right? And there's the other side of the spectrum that says, wait until, be super conservative and wait till it's throwing off a ton of cash and it's a no-brainer to leave, right? For me, it was somewhere in between, where it wasn't like I burned the boats right away, I went full time, and I didn't wait until it was, I'd say you're kind of on the other end of the spectrum, yeah. Right? I guess my personal thought on that is it's, burning the boats can work early on, but I think you at least need some sort of business that's generating some sort of revenue, right? To just say, hey, I had this idea for this business I want to start, and I'm going to leave and go full time on that. Unless you're in a position where, hey, I got a bunch of money saved, or I have this other thing that's already working, it might make sense. But that's kind of how I've approached deciding when to do it. The second thing you said was taking the insights and knowledge you've learned from a corporate career and applying it to your own business. I certainly think that's true.
Uline's a great one, too.
I learned a lot, too, at the company I worked at Uline. I was there for 5 years. Great organization. You just learn a lot about how big companies run.
For sure.
Right? And you kind of just see the different frameworks of processes they follow, right? Kind of the hierarchy of having a manager and the VP, and kind of how that all flows, and decision making. And so I think it's always good to take knowledge you've learned in your career, right, and apply it to your own business. That being said, what's like one thing, you touched on a little bit, that now, you're a few weeks into, being full-time into this, what's like the biggest difference you've noticed in your day-to-day life of being, in this role compared to where you're at before?
Well, I do want to go back to the calculated risk thing before, but the biggest thing that I've realized, it honestly might even be too early, because I'm still trying to figure out like sort of a rhythm and a cadence to the day and the week. And we just were down in Orlando at a conference, and so that sort of throws off your rhythm. But like I said, I feel I love the real estate business. I love talking real estate. It's a passion of mine, and it has been for a long time. So, there was certain, I find that I'm more present and more passionate about what I'm talking about. And I think that will pay dividends down the road, as that compounds, more and more calls where you're actually fired up, you're actually passionate about it, and you're not just kind of going through some corporate monotonous thing that you're like, oh, I don't want to do this, not to bash on that at all, but I think that's the main thing. I feel more present in what I'm doing. I still feel busy as hell. I mean, we got a lot of stuff going on right now, a lot, which is a good thing, right? But I'm just trying to figure out, okay, how can I be the most productive, the most efficient? When you're running your own business, you really get to make those decisions, right? And you do within SAP. I had a great leader. His name was, he's a friend of mine. His name's Drew Ellis. And he always talked about the Eisenhower chart, which is something that I have printed off. I'm going to get it framed, but it's essentially, it's a decision-making matrix to figure out whether if it's important and it can't wait, then you do it now. If it's important and it can wait, then you schedule it out on your calendar and do it later. If it's not important but it can't wait, then you delegate it. If it's not important and it can wait, then you basically just either delegate it or delete it, right? And so the thing is, I would say right now I haven't been able to really get a good handle on a rhythm that I feel really good and comfortable with yet, but I will. And I've been spending time thinking about that. And I know this goes back to a lot of stuff we've talked about with habits and discipline and different things like that. And I find when I'm best and most productive, it's when I have my morning and my night kind of, because the day, no matter what, whether you're in enterprise sales in corporate America or you're in a full-time real estate business, that the day is going to be chaotic. And there's going to be, Mike Tyson says it, everybody's got a plan to get punched in the face or the mouth. So it's like finding those hours from 6 to 9 a.m. where you can work out, go through your emails, go through text messages that you missed, and get caught up on that, and maybe knock out one or two things that you really want to get done that day. And then from 9 to 5 or 6, there's going to be a lot of chaos and bullshit or whatever, right? And then after that at night, if you spend some time preparing for the day before or the next day, you're able to operate the most efficiently. And I'm trying to kind of get back to that. But
well, the biggest thing, I went through the same thing when I had my transition, but the biggest thing is you go from, as a W-2, right? You wake up and your calendar is already set for you, right? You don't really have any control over your schedule. It's people are throwing meetings on there and your day's already booked.
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, you control your schedule.
Yeah.
And the day might be just as busy, but now you're in control to decide, hey, I'm going to take this meeting, I'm going to do this.
Exactly.
And you set your schedule for the week. So I certainly went through that, and I think honestly struggled with the first few months because I used to have to go in the office Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
So from 9 to 5, I was in the office. And couldn't really leave there, right? So I struggle with now. It's like, well, I can go golfing now whenever I want, or I can do this, right? So
but you're going to work your ass off later on.
Still work just as much, on the weekends or ever covering it up. But it's to me, that's the biggest benefit of being an entrepreneur, right? Is the time freedom of being able to. You might still work 50 hours a week, right? But you can now decide, hey, I'm going to take this afternoon off and instead work this day, or I'm going to go do this on this day. I'm going to take 3 days and go on vacation. I don't have to get it approved by my boss.
Yeah.
That was a big thing for me. But maybe, so 2 questions to kind of wrap this up. Number one is, what is the number one thing that you learned in your corporate career, throughout your whole corporate career, that you would tell other people that you can apply as an entrepreneur?
Man, there's so many. The number one thing. You know what I would say, what I would say is if you work your ass off and you treat people the way that you would want to be treated, you're going to have more opportunities than you'll ever really even need, because people want to do business with people like that. And I can't tell you how many times, at at SAP, where I'm fortunate that people wanted me on their teams and just doors opened for me and things like that. And so if I could just apply that to my entrepreneurial endeavors, right? Being a good guy and working my ass off, what it did is it gave me the confidence that it will work out. If you just take care of those two things, and then you got to get smart and prioritize and work smarter, not harder. That's something that we're all struggling at. But that would be the main thing that I try to do each day. Treat people the way I would want to be treated. And that's don't fuck someone over in a deal. Don't fuck over your partner. Don't work your ass off. Find the time to work, whether or not you want to go golfing on Thursday or whatever, but find the time to make it up and get done what you say you're going to get done. People are going to want to work with you. And that's very, very, very important in the real estate business, where if you can win deals because people want to work with you because you're likable and they know you're going to get stuff done and you're going to do what you say you're going to do. That would be the number one thing I would say.
I like it. And then last question, what's the next big thing you're working on?
The next big thing is this real estate fund. I thought it'd be launched by now, but we're ready to launch this thing. Obviously, me, you, and Adam, and are doing what we're calling SAC, Smart Asset Capital, SAC Industrial Fund 1, and it's basically a fund focused on acquiring Class B industrial real estate that have value add potential as well as some stabilized, predictable cash flow deals to really provide a really nice blended, optimized return for our investors. And I'm super bullish on the fund model. We've done a lot of syndications. I've done joint ventures. I've done deals on my own. But I think the fund is the most scalable. And it's something that I hope that, we can take this first fund and be really successful and then, do a lot more of these and someday, be ringing the bell on Wall Street.
Love it. Yep. That's exciting. So, all right. Well, I think that wraps it up then. G Money over here. He's also now a new social media influencer. So hit him up on LinkedIn, IG, give him a follow. He's going to start pumping out some more content.
I'm going to have to start working on that. I got to schedule the time for it because it is important. G Money, hit me up. LinkedIn's the best place.
That's the pod.
All right, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you got some value listening about my journey going full-time in the real estate business. If you've got any value out of it, please don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to speak and help anyone I can. And but more importantly, please like, share, subscribe, and smash the like button, actually. Thank you.